Thank you, Rosalind, for starting the recording. So again, we'll be recording the presentation today, but we'll turn it off during the Q&A session, so you don't feel embarrassed to ask any questions. If you come up with questions during the presentation, please write them down yourself or put them in the chat, and we'll come to them at the end so that we can give Sabine the full time to give her presentation, and then we'll go to the Q&A. So, without further ado, I'm very, very pleased that Sabine Gollner is joining us today to talk about work she's involved in related to conservation and restoration at nodule fields and hydrothermal vents. Really great work that's going on there, and I'm so thankful that she will share that with us. So, Sabine, I'll turn it over to you if you want to bring up your slides and begin your presentation.
Yeah, great. Thanks a lot, Beth. So I will share my screen and hope everyone is hearing me fine.
Yeah, you sound okay.
Okay, very good. So bring my presentation in presentation mode. Yes. Okay.
Yeah,
Can everyone
looks good on
see
our
the
end.
screen? Okay, good. Perfect. So yeah, Beth, thanks a lot for the really nice introduction, also for the invitation to be able to talk about actually not only work that I'm doing, but mainly about work that the whole European project is doing, the Deep Rest Consortium. Since now 3 years, we have a project called Deep Rest in Europe with 15 partners from 8 countries that is led by José Sarrazin from Ifremer, France, about the conservation and restoration of marine ecosystems in the context of deep sea mining, where we basically focus at polymetallic nodule fields and hydrothermal vents. I myself am one of the work package leads, and as said, José is the PI of the whole consortium. Good. So first of all, why are we talking about this? And I think also looking at the audience who is here, I think we have a lot of very experienced people here, with also very different and nice backgrounds. And I think all of us is aware that we are currently, having an increasing demand in resources. And we also all know, of course, that there are a lot of minerals in the deep sea, including at polymetallic nodules, polymetallic nodule fields, and also at hydrothermal vents in the form of seafloor massive sulfides. And I'm also pretty sure that many of you know this map, but I will go through a bit to set the scene basically. So when we look at deep sea mineral resources, we have overall, there are a bit more, but like roughly there are 3 different kinds. We have polymetallic nodules that are found on abyssal plains. And here the richest occurrences that we know of are, for example, here in the Clarion-Clipperton fracture, so in the Pacific Ocean. Then we have polymetallic sulfates at hydrothermal vents, which occur mainly along mid-ocean ridges, like here, for example, along the North Mid-Atlantic ridge, or here along the Indian ridge, the Indian Triple Junction here, or also along back-arc basins, like here in Lau Basin. And we also have cobalt-rich crusts at seamounts. So 3 very different ecosystems. Today, I will not talk about seamounts, but I will talk about polymetallic nodules and about hydrothermal vents. What is also important in the whole context of deep seabed mining and conservation restoration at nodule fields and at hydrothermal vents is also that we are aware of what's going on at this moment. And you might already recognize that here are some country names in middle of the ocean. And this is related to how the seabed is governed. So areas beyond national jurisdictions, so beyond the 200 nautical mile zone, I can go back here. So basically everything that is beyond this white stippled line, these are governed by the International Seabed Authority. And basically they can issue exploration contracts and to different countries and contractors. And at this moment, sorry, I just have to, because I have not the full screen for me, but I see you also. So basically what you can see here is a map of the world with different countries' names, where you can see who at this moment has an exploration contract in areas beyond national jurisdiction. And at this moment, we have more than 30 contracts. Most of them are for nodules, and they occur here in the Clarion-Clipperton fracture zone. And one exploration contract for nodules, it's 75,000 square kilometers. So I now live in the Netherlands. That would be about twice the size of the Netherlands as comparison for those who at least, yeah, probably, I don't know if who knows you how small the Netherlands is, but yeah, just to give you a bit of a number, of a scale. There are also 7 contracts for polymetallic sulfides. They occur mostly here in the Indian Ocean, but also here in the North and Mid-Atlantic. And there are also 5 for crusts. The last couple of years were quite interesting also with regards to test mining and technology development. In 2021, the Belgian company Demet GSR has developed the first test mining vehicle, did the first mining test in the Klein-Clipperton fracture zone in the German and in the Belgium license area. So these areas would be here in this area in the Klein-Clipperton fracture zone. Followed by 2022 by the metals company who did a test in the Nori-D area, where they also not only collected nodules but also brought them to the surface vessel. In addition, there are currently more developments ongoing. So China, 2 contractors from China have submitted an impact statement to the ISA, also developing technologies, and also right now Impossible Metals with the German BGR, they also submitted an impact statement, also with the plan to do some test mining. At the moment, there is no exploitation, and the exploitation regulations are in development already since a couple of years. I think also most of you know that some years ago in 21, there was this 2-year trigger pulled by Nauru, basically with the aim or with the call to have the exploitation regulations ready by 23. I think most of you also know that this has not happened, and that currently there is the view to adopt regulations in 25. But of course, we will see how this develops this year. Here's a bit of a closer look of the polymetallic nodule fields in the Klein-Clipperton fracture zone. And probably what will be very soon in the news, I guess, or probably more towards June, is that Nauru with Nori and the Metals community wants to hand in a plan of work, so for nodule exploitation on the 27th of June this year. So this would be an area that is located here. Another topic, and I talked now a lot about nodules, but another hot topic is also about hydrothermal vents and polymetallic sulfides. And here there are very recent developments, especially in Norwegian waters, so in areas within national jurisdiction. So it's not related to the ISA, where basically the Norwegian Parliament approved mineral exploration in 23. But in the case of Norway, there's not such a clear separation like for the IS, like for international seabed, where we have first exploration, then exploitation. So they are basically, they approved mineral exploration in 23, but this year they also said, okay, they now stop licensing until September 25 this year. And then we'll see how it proceeds there. So this is about potential exploration and potential later exploitation of polymetallic sulfides here in Norwegian waters. So basically, the clock is ticking. There's a lot of interest in deep sea minerals from in areas within national jurisdiction and beyond, different ecosystems, different mineral types. But what is important to recognize that also that we know a lot about biodiversity and more about biodiversity in these ecosystems. There are still a lot of knowledge gaps. And also, we really urgently need information on how to potentially mitigate any potential future impacts of mining. And this is where the Deep Rest project comes into place. And of course, many people worldwide are working on that. But in this project, we focus on basically on polymetallic nodule fields and hydrothermal vents. And we especially consider here the Klein-Clipperton fracture zone, and here the Discal area. And for the hydrothermal vents, we look mainly at the North Mid-Atlantic Ridge and at the Amur. So if you would ask me, characterize these 2 very different ecosystems with 1 or 2 words, I would probably tell you unique adaptations for hydrothermal vents, and probably I will tell you hyperdiverse for polymetallic nodule fields. This are for me like two terms that would characterize these very different ecosystems in the deep sea. And I think it's really important that I always stress this out, that probably there couldn't be more different ecosystems in the deep sea than these two. So at hydrothermal vents, we have, of course, hot water that's coming out of the seafloor. It's enriched with metals, with hydrogen sulfide. It's poor in oxygen, very hot, low pH, where we have in situ primary production, where we have a lot of very unique species that are found nowhere else with very unique adaptations to these active hydrothermal vents. And whilst it's the polymetallic nodules, we are astonished, I think, every time we go out there by how many different species we find there. And we also know more and more how important the nodules are, because they provide a habitat there. And considering also probably timescales, or not timescales, but dynamics, wise the hydrothermal vents, the active ones, are extremely dynamic environments. I think polymetallic nodules can be characterized as very stable ecosystems with very stable conditions, low temperatures, and low productivity. So really very different ecosystems. That's why we also need to look at them separately. It's always nice to talk about things, but it's even better to see some things. So here's a video that was made by Ifremer, by the Bicos crews, showing some mussel beds at hydrothermal vents. You can see a black smoker with some Remicaris shrimp swarms close by these active black smokers. You can see the high densities of these organisms. You can also see they occur in high biomass. They're rather large animals. And you can also see here this white courageous would be the bacterial mats. And now very different. Here's videos from the Clare-Clipperton fracture zone, 4,000 meters water depth from polymetallic nodule fields. You can see here the nodules that are basically laying on the seafloor. Now you can see a fish. And here you could see, for example, a stalked sponge that is attached to a nodule. You also see that these nodule fields, they're really fields, so they are rather widespread. Also, the nodule abundance can be, and densities can be very different also on small spatial scales. And here you can also see that nodules are important for important habitat. So here, for example, you can see an anemone sitting on a nodule that wouldn't be able to live there without a nodule. There's also larger mobile epifauna like sea cucumbers, sea urchins, or here you can see one of these octopuses that also lives in these areas. But I think really very important is to always know and consider and keep in mind that the nodule is an important habitat former in this environment. Here you can see another example of a sponge and a little crustacean associated to it. So very different ecosystems. So the Deep Rest project, we tackle basically these two different ecosystems, and we have 6 work packages. The first one is coordination, and these work packages basically aim to cover all the also knowledge that is needed in order to be able to conserve biodiversity in the deep sea, and also to test the effectiveness of restoration, active and passive. So in work package 2, we mainly study biodiversity and connectivity. In work package 3, we address recovery potential. In work package 4, we have some experiments with regards to restoration. And then we also have work packages on governance and also on outreach. So that's basically how the project is structured. And I will try to give you some highlights about the different parts of the project without the aim to being complete here, because it's a lot of different institutes, and although we have a lot of time here, it still, of course, is not enough to tell about every little detail. So I picked out a few things to give you an overall taste, basically, and where we stand right now. So with regards to biodiversity, you want to give an example of a study of studies from basically microbes to megafauna in the Clare-Clipperton fracture zone. that points out our increased understanding of high temporal variability and also spatial variability. So here you can see some data from Massimiliano, who studied bacteria and archaea in the sediments in the CCZ throughout different years from 2019, 21, and 22 in 2 different areas in the Klein-Clipperton fracture zone. And without going into too much detail here, you can see from the color patterns that basically there was a difference with the years. So a change with the years, and also a difference according to the locality. And what is interesting, I think, and what we more and more realize with also more studies is this actually this high temporal and spatial variability not only holds true for the microbes, but also holds true for the myofauna, which I don't show here, for the macrofauna, which I don't show here, but also for the megafauna. So here's an example from Lily Böhringer, who analyzed video transect from the Claren-Clipperton fracture zone. And so basically looking at sea cucumbers, on anemones, corals, and so on. And basically collecting information again from the Belgium area and the German area in the Claren-Clipperton fracture zone, polymetallic nodules, also again in 2 different years. And you can see here very nicely again that there's really a large difference between the 2 different years. What are the underlying reasons for this also high temporal variability is not yet fully understood. We think that it has to do with productivity in the surface waters. I think that's probably the most, the reason that is mostly referred to as being a cause for this high temporal variability that we observe with regards to densities, but also with regards to sometimes biodiversity. But I think that's really something that's really was, I think, surprising to many scientists, that we really have this high variability in the Claren-Clipperton fracture zone in a basically ecosystem that looks at the first glance very homogeneous, but actually it's not. There's also right now a manuscript in review on the connectivity, so watch out for the space. And also next to the polymetallic nodules in the Deep Rest project, we also study hydrothermal vent ecosystems. And here's an example by Marilyn Matavos, who is studying the hydrothermal vent field Lucky Strike. And there they basically analyze and make 2 and 3D models to compare, in this case, a young active vent site to a more mature vent site. And they basically really want to also bring forward the technology of 3D imaging. And again, I think this points out again to high habitat variability also at active hydrothermal vents. Next to active hydrothermal vents, of course, it's also very important to get more information about inactive vents, especially with regards to deep seabed mining, as this is also the main, basically, area of interest from a mineral perspective. And here you see preliminary results from William Johnson da Silva, who is working on at the active vent Lucky Strike, North Midlandic Ridge, but also looking at the periphery area and also at the inactive sites. And this is a study on the myofauna, and here you can see very nicely that even on the higher taxon level, we have a really clear distinction and high variability between the different habitat types at the Lucky Strike vent field. So different communities at the active vent, at the periphery, and at the inactive, with the inactive one being here more dominated by the coppepodes. You can also see a PCA that plots also the species. And what is, of course, also, it's always very nice, but also not surprising, is that, of course, there are also many new species discovered, especially in basically areas where we do not know yet so much. So here you can see a nice photograph of a new nematode species that was very abundant at inactive vents. So also here, very interesting to see high habitat variability within vent fields and different habitats with regards to active, inactive, and peripheral areas. So that's basically a kind of a short zooming into the variability of the different ecosystems that we study. Next to that, we also look into recovery potential, and here are some results from Ellen Pape and Lara Macchiato and Nele Lefebvre from Ghent University that studied the short-term impacts after the Batania 2 test in the Klein-Clipperton fracture zone. So here you can see basically images before nodule test mining in the Klein-Clipperton fracture zone. The direct impact area, you can see also the caterpillar tracks of the mining vehicle. And here the indirect impact area, where you can still see the nodules here, but that were covered by the created sediment plume during this mining test. This area was, the pictures is taken rather close to the direct impact site. And what they did is basically that they looked at nematode abundances. They choose nematodes because this is the most abundant taxon in deep sea sediments. So they looked at nematode abundances and also at amplicon sequence variants of nematodes. And also at food availability. And they found that basically in the direct impact area, there was reduced nematode abundances, reduced biodiversity in terms of speaking of ASVs, and also reduced food. Whilst interestingly, in the indirect impact area, there was an opposite trend. And why this was the case, it's still not so clear. If it has to be with basically, translocation. It was also not clear if this the densities, if all the animals would really, be alive when they have been collected. So there's still some questions to be solved. But but this trend was obvious, was clear that basically, these two opposite trends were found. And also these differences became greater with time. So here it also shows it's really important also to look continuously at the environmental impacts of mining to better understand those. Next to that, also a couple of partners also look into the potential effects of toxicity that could basically would occur with deep seabed mining. Also, many of the deep rest members were also contributing to a workshop on ecotoxicology and thresholds. And here's just, they wanted to point out one of the experiments, in this case, one that was done at hydrothermal vents by José Sarrazin, Anna Colasso, and Nelia Mestre. And it shows basically a device, how they tested exposure to sulfide particles. So basically what you can see here is the so-called spider equipment. It's basically a pot that is put by an RV on top of the mussels and then basically injects minerals, metals, and then basically tests how the animals would react to that. So you can see basically how the RV is basically, also then collecting the samples afterwards. So the spider instrument was left there for 15 hours. And then the ROV basically sampled all the fauna with the aim basically to analyze the community afterwards and also to basically set aside key species for ecotox analysis and also fatty acids. And one of the first results is that, for example, that they could measure metal accumulation in the gills and in the gills of the mussels and in the shrimp, and also that the biogeochemical response was induced with higher metallothionein and also catalyze activities in mussels. So also here there was a clear indication that the animals reacted to this. Another thing that is important when we look at how animals, how resilient they are and how we get to know that they're resilient is also looking at different methods, how to be able to catch those responses. And I think, as many of you know, it can be sometimes very difficult to do this based also on biodiversity. So another approach is also a trait-based approach. And here, Anna Hilario and Sofia Romalo, they basically developed together with a large group the FD-Mine database, where basically together we discussed how the different traits can be scored for different animals. There's already it's I think also now still under review, but it will be published on Dryite. It's available very soon, I think, where you can also see then the scoring of all the different CCZ species that occur. And also together, basically, all the categories were discussed and what traits are important. And the same is also at the moment done for some hydrothermal vent species. So with the same basically concept, but then with basically adding more species to this list, with basically the aim to create a traits database that can be also used by everyone. So that's about biodiversity, variability of biodiversity, how animals could respond to changes in environment due to anthropogenic impacts. One of the parts that we also look at deep rest is at restoration experiments. And here, basically, within the consortium, there are three experiments ongoing at this moment, which two I will talk a bit about. So one is on artificial nodules, one is on the decompaction of sediments after dredging, and one is on the role of substrate use at hydrothermal vents. With regards to the substrate use at hydrothermal vents, there is an experiment ongoing by Alicia Valliot, who basically deployed different substrate types at different hydrothermal vent conditions at vent fields at the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. And what is interesting to see that the faunal abundances and taxonomic richness, they were highest in low activities at the vent fields, and were basically biodiversities and abundances were lowest at actually moderate activity. But I think what is probably also very interesting also with regards to any restoration or more like understanding potential restoration actions, really more on the experimental side here, is that they also observed significant differences in bacterial communities between the different substrates. So here I think one of the take-home messages is that really substrate is important, and that according to what substrate you use, you would probably get different communities. An experiment that we did we are currently doing at polymetallic nodules is the one on artificial nodules. This is the project that I started a couple of years ago already during the Mining Impact project, where we basically want to test the feasibility of artificial hard substrate for restoration through time and space, where we basically want to find out mainly more about what can trigger colonization of different organisms, also what are the growth rates of deep sea organisms. And there we basically used three different materials. We used deep sea clay to make artificial nodules, commercial clay to make artificial nodules, and the experiments were also equipped with natural nodules as controls. And this is how we looked at it. So we also thought about a way to get sufficient replication, because I think, as many of you know, replication is a difficult thing in the deep sea, especially at polymetallic nodule fields with this extremely high variability. So we basically came up with the idea to mount this like 25 different nodules on a frame to be able to deploy them in a time that is manageable with an RV. And throughout the years, so in 2019, 21, and 22, we deployed basically these racks with artificial nodules in the Claren-Clipperton fracture zone in two different areas, but focusing mainly in the German area. A total of 120 experiments are deployed, and the plan is to study these experiments about the next 30 years, because we know that recovery rates will be low and slow. Sorry. So the first set was recovered during the Son expedition 295 in December 2022, where we could recover basically 5 frames in 4 different locations. So basically yielding a total of 500 nodules we can investigate. So we basically collected these frames with an RV, put them then in a bio box, isolated one, and brought it back to the surface. On board of the ship, we then basically inspected first the nodule visually. If there was anything on that we could see with our eyes, we would keep it aside. Then we scratched the nodule also to remove biofilm, also fixed this in ethanol. And also in addition, like stored the entire nodule also in ethanol to recheck it back in the lab. And here I want to show you some really first results what we basically found after this 1 year-long deployed nodules. This is now from the BGR collector area. Also, I'm saying this is really preliminary data. They are not published anywhere, so please don't reuse this data yet because it's really work in progress. But what is a first interesting result is that when we look at microbial communities, is that basically all types of nodules from frames have DNA. So there was some form of microbes were there, and also the control was good. When we look at how much, what is the densities of this nodule of the DNA, you can see here a big difference between basically here, this red bar and the rest, and also difference between this here and this rest here. So basically, now let's see if I have this here. Yes. So what are the first results here from this first set of experiments is that the natural nodules that we collected from box cores had about 10 times more DNA than all the others. Yeah. This was basically this is the first preliminary result, and also what was interesting from within the experiment, where we also had this natural nodules as controlled, basically that have been in the deep sea for 1 year. Also there we observed a higher DNA content. So it seems that natural nodules basically are more suitable for community development with regards to microbes. And then Kuhn, a master student, he looked then at the NIOZ for visual things on the nodules, which was very difficult because it was very difficult to discriminate, what it was. So even the morphotypes were very different to discriminate, also because things were very tiny. On average, basically about so less than 1 square millimeter, so that's tiny, was basically covered by something visible. Whatever this is, we don't know yet. Also, we need to still carry out analysis. But it was interesting to see that on these natural nodules on the frame, this coverage was higher, still also very low, only 4 square millimeters. But you could already basically see a similar trend than what we observed in the microbial communities, that there is more, whatever this more is, on the natural nodules compared to the artificial nodules. Here we don't have data yet from natural nodules that were taken by box cores, so this is still ongoing, something to find out. And also we have no data on biodiversity yet, so this is also something that is still ongoing. So this is pure on basically a trend on what was still observed visually on these nodules. But yeah, interesting is that we have a similar trend for the microbes and for whatever visible other organisms these have been. Good. So what does all these results about biodiversity, variability, habitat heterogeneity, the knowns and unknowns of restoration tell us about the conservation of these habitats? And here we come to work package 5. So one of the things that we did basically when was it, last summer, is that we shared with delegates at the ISA information sheet on the mitigation hierarchy of polymetallic nodules and sulfides. This is a combined project or approach from the deep rest community with the DOSI communities. And here we basically looked at the mitigation hierarchy and scored within this group of experts what we already know about this and what this could tell us how we can apply the mitigation hierarchy in the context of deep seabed mining. And here you can basically see the required context that is needed. So here is basically an ecological variable. For example, this could be biodiversity or any other variable that you choose. That you would have for the project. So this would be the frame of reference. So for example, whatever 150 species, doesn't matter what. So this is like the ecological variable you look at. Then you would have after an impact, an environmental effect, and this would be reduced, for example. And then also before the start of a project, you would, from a management perspective, set an objective. This could be, for example, that you accept a certain loss of biodiversity. This could be that you accept no net loss of biodiversity because of the project. Or it could also be even to get a net gain. So this is something that is applied in many different fields around the globe when it comes to projects and environmental impact assessments and mitigation of impacts. And then in the middle here, you would see how this would currently, with our current knowledge, apply to in a deep sea context. So basically, green illustrates this is possible. So of course, if you avoid certain effects of deep sea bed mining, you can reduce the impact. Yeah, this would be the green. So avoidance. Also with mitigation, minimization. Here, think about minimizing plume impact, reducing the footprint of the plume. You can also reduce the impact. However, with this, you will not come back to your original baseline data, to the 0 point here, because of course you have removed the nodules, for example, or other things. Then a next step in the mitigation hierarchy would be restoration. But here, basically, we have very high uncertainty at the moment with regards to the deep sea, as we do not know yet if it's effective or not. Because also there are very few studies on restoration in the deep sea, and it still will take time to know if and to what degree it would be effective or not. So here's a high uncertainty to what degree it can also be integrated and implemented in a management context. And then we have basically offsetting. And in this information brief, we also again basically give appendices where we basically discuss and basically list all the different mitigation hierarchy and what is basically the current state of known effectiveness. This is basically just some examples. If you want to know more, just check out the thing on the internet. Good. Then one more last thing I would like to point out with regards to management. Now we go a bit more into detail into hydrothermal vents again and polymetallic sulfides. So here you can see basically a cross section of a mid-ocean ridge, for example, where we have an active vent and an inactive vent deposit. And at this moment, of course, many of you know, the target would be more the inactive vents, whilst also it recognizes that the active vents should be protected. However, when we look at, for example, the ISA draft ramp for the Northern Atlantic Ridge, or also when we look at what in the Norwegian case for deep sea mining is written down with regards to protection of active vents, it's in both cases it's recognized. It says no mining at active vents, but at the same time, it only gives currently a point coordinate. And when we now look at this from an ecological perspective about the sphere of vent influence, so that we have, for example, a vent, active vent with a larval dispersal in the water column, with the impact of, for example, primary productivity on nearby active vents. But also when we look at some recent findings that there's also probably life below hydrothermal vents, active vents, we also don't know the extent. It's when we look at this with a precautionary approach, it's clear that even if you only want to protect the active vents, because at the inactive vents we still have also very pure, not a lot of knowledge, but just if you would like to need to protect active vents, if you agree on that, actually it would require a larger area to be able to really protect this place here, basically acknowledging dispersal pathways and actual living spaces of these communities. So it's also ongoing work within Deep Rest. With regards to governance, here we have Manuel Bélanger, who looked at pending challenges, which there are several, including, for example, benefit sharing, or also how the BBNJ agreement is implemented. Also who is responsible for damages, and also one important one is also how basically the precautionary principle is operationalized. And then also interestingly, Asif Khan, he's an Bofman and Asif, they're like not environmental scientists, but they have economic or law background. Asif has an economic background, and they basically did choice experiments. So basically a questionnaire in Norway, where basically they ask people to about their preferences for mining and test mining, and basically yeah, the majority, 70% of respondents showed a negative preference towards large scale commercial mining, basically highlighting the environmental risks. And when they ask basically the people about the preferences with regards to experimental mining, the views were very divided. So with about half of them had a positive preference and half of them had a negative utility for it. But it's also interesting to see that basically they had a broad support for governance led by state and scientific institutions. Yeah, and then as a last point, and I know it's a very large project, and I hope you're still with me, is that we also try to communicate our results to the general public. So partners in the project, they developed, for example, a board game called Blue Diplomacy that was also tested. We also did street interviews, Fox Pops, to basically get more and better understanding of what people on the street know about the deep sea. Also, this I think is already online on the website. There were art and science projects. And what is also very nice that Jose also could now get funding that we can bring a theater play, Splush, also to the ISA in June. And this is basic in July, sorry, it should be July. It is July, okay. Basically also letting, so it's a theater play that basically brings the people with audio and yeah, in an artistic way also towards the deep sea, and basically let people also experience the deep sea in a different manner. So it's a true multi-transdisciplinary approach that we have in Deep Rest. Very a lot of different partners involved. I hope I could give a kind of overview of what we are doing. I think it's important to keep in mind that that mining the habitat will be removed. So this is something that is I think something that really needs to be considered in the whole discussion. It's therefore very important to before any project starts that really are very clear about the environmental objectives. I think that's really key to the whole discussion. There needs to be discussion of what is allowed, what is not allowed before something is starting, because there will be losses with our current knowledge. Mitigation hierarchy, I think, is key to that, to be aware of that, also of this stepwise approach. And with regards to thresholds and also the variability that we have in the deep sea environments, spatial and temporal variability, I think it also points out, although we know a lot, that we still need more information to be able to set thresholds for toxicology, for example, but also to be able to set, for example, protected areas that are really effective. Yeah. And also what is, I think, interesting to see that really the public is interested, and I think they should also be taken into account. So that's my final slide. It's what's next. So the Deep Rest project will end this year. But what is very good to know, we're very happy about that, is that we got the news a couple of weeks ago that there will be a continuation of the studying of deep sea communities and with regards to also deep sea mining impact. So there will be a mining impact free phase starting in July. And there were also many project partners. Not all are the same because countries, not every country basically is involved in deep rest or in mining impact, but many of the partners are similar, and basically this will also allow us to basically continue the work or a lot of the work that we are doing in deep rest in the future. And with that, I would like to thank you for the attention.
Thank you so much, Sabine. That was a great overview of a lot of work. Thank you for digesting all of that for us.